you don't mind, can we stand, please? Let us pray. God our Father, we give you thanks always for the gift and beauty of another day, for the night of rest that has passed, and for the opportunity we always have in serving you as we serve each other. We pray, dear Heavenly Father, that your grace, peace, and joy be upon us and with us this day, that your grace and mercy always abounds, and that we always look to you, who's the author and finisher of our faith. We invite your presence, your spirit in this place as we celebrate International Men's Day, as we look at the role and responsibility of men in the home and family, in our nations, and in the lives and livelihoods of all those around. We pray that you will guide these proceedings, you'll be among us, so that even if there are glitches and there are things that arise that are not unplanned, that all things will work together, and that at the end of the day, we'll all have a wonderful day, being resourceful and giving you thanks. This we ask in the name of Christ, we pray. Amen.
The lady, please. Thank you, Father Hodge. Honorable Minister of Education, Health, and Social Services, and also Acting Premier, the Right Honorable Dr. Clarice Barnes, Father Hodge, other distinguished guests, our men, our distinguished men, and if there are any boys among us, the media, and the staff of the Ministry of Education, Health, and Social Services. It gives me immense pleasure today to welcome you to this celebration of International Men's Day 2023, which is celebrated annually on the 19th of November. This event is close to my heart for a number of reasons. I feel a strong duty to support, protect, and empower families. Men and boys are a part of every family, and I remain committed to that calling in spite of a calling born out of my love for God and people, to see lives, communities, and this nation transformed. Celebrating International Men's Day provides a further opportunity to join in the global celebration of men and boys, their strengths, their love and protection for their families and communities. We cannot omit their contributions, achievements, and the sacrifices made, at the same time acknowledging their vulnerabilities, their needs, and the matters that affect them. C.W. Roberts added that today we transcend, and I hope we can continue to transcend, the negative stereotyping and to encourage and embrace greater options for men and for all people. A critical factor is men's mental health and well-being. The data shows, and allow me to quote, for it is shocking, globally every year, 452 men commit suicide. Almost twice as many kill themselves compared to women. In Western societies, for every one woman who commits suicide, 3 to 4 men commit suicide. The experts submit we're in an epidemic of male suicides. And the World Health Organization data reveals that except for China, the rate of suicide in men is higher than that of women, in some cases as high as 6 men for every 1 woman. There needs to be an end to this. And so they have called upon organizations as well as individual governments to acknowledge the scale of the problem facing our men and boys and to take sustained actions to tackle them. The health of all men do contribute to suicide across the world. Our children suffer, and we all suffer. when we lose a father, grandfather, uncle, brother, cousin, friend, or colleague prematurely by suicide. You may ask, Mrs. Hector, we have no suicide in Montserrat. It's a serious issue for the world, but not us. I wish to challenge you today. We are not immune. One suicide is too many, and it's very important that we address it. Prevention is better than cure. A holistic approach is required, and we are required to embrace each other in tackling this. It is no surprise then that I support the theme and sub-theme of Zero Suicide, Men Matters, Embrace, Elevate, Transform. Today, I want to take time to remember all the families that have had to deal with suicide or threats of suicide. Suicide does not stand on its own, but is born out of several factors. Men and boys, I want you to know, not just for today, but for always, that you matter. Your mental health matters, just as your physical health and well-being. Today, our embrace speaks more than 1,000 words. Our embrace is reflected in the many groups and individuals who are supporting this initiative, supporting you. And I want to thank everyone who have partnered with us. The government of Montserrat remains committed to protect, help, support, and empower. Men, you matter. There is no health without good mental health. As a government, we seek to increase our mental health services and our professional care. Good health comes when mind and body and spirit are in total harmony, says Warwick Walsh. And we continue to seek to empower you, as Dr. Coward has said, and throughout the last 4 years, our discussion on men's health and well-being, men balancing their physical and mental health, removing the mask. I agree with the speaker, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Regardless of who you are or what you do for a living, suicide does not discriminate. Depression does not discriminate. Poor mental health does not discriminate. We've got to talk about it, and you are not alone. Let's talk to friends, to our doctors, or just someone else. Let Men Talk is a key element of this program. We continue to create a safe space for men to share, reflect, and build, as well as discussions held on the radio on mental health. Let us love, learn, listen. Sometimes listening to what is not said. We must pay attention. We must continue to elevate the matters and issues that concern you, our men. Your health remains paramount. And so today the doctor will come to you. Your blood pressure, glucose levels will be tested, and we invite you to please participate. We also have access to half-price PSA tests to check prostate health. This is a life and death issue for many of our men, especially black men, and we continue to take it seriously. We have elevated this issue as a government by affording access to being tested and having a visiting urologist on the health team. We cannot underestimate the importance of these tests, as they can prevent suffering and untimely death. So please, men, I urge you, take advantage of these opportunities. I want to thank all our doctors, MAC, Dr. Ingrid Buffon, and DR Diagnostic, Pink Ribbon, the Right Honorable Dr. Clarice Barnes, and all the other organizations for the work that they have been doing in this area over the years. We must embrace each other if we are going to reach our men and transform our community. And so today, men, you're going to be pampered as well. Head massages, mini facials, and pedicures, and lots of gift vouchers to include barbering. We must invite you always to balance work and life. Being serious about your mental and physical well-being and recreation. Being more inclusive, and so we have board games, basketball, and a car clash. Well done to the organization and the organizers, the team at the Social Services Department. On that note, let me express my sincere thanks to those who have worked so hard to bring this day to a reality, and the presenters for their time and effort. We continue to embrace and celebrate all the men and boys, no matter your job, profession, race, creed. Men and boys, you matter, just like our women and girls. We embrace your ability, potential for positive transformation. Transform your homes, workplace, community. We will continue to work together to support our men and boys. Together we can work for zero men's suicide, better health for our men and boys, and become advocates for improvement in your physical health, well-being, and other matters that concern you. I wish you all excellent health, well-being, and great success. Men, you matter. Your matters concern us. God bless you all.
Thank you, Honourable Dorset Hector, excellent. You touched on a lot of themes there. You underlined the theme for International Men's Day across the world. Don't forget it's celebrated in about 70 countries around the world, and we're just one of those countries. The theme being zero suicide, recognizing that men bear the brunt of suicide. Women may there's different statistics between men and women in terms of suicide, but men do come out worse in terms of successful suicide, shall we say. And we don't escape that in Montserrat. So you may have heard statistics saying how in the last 15 years we've had 3 suicides, but in the last 2 to 3 years we've had over 100 cases of suicide ideation. People who was thinking about it, making plans about it, has told somebody they're considering it, etc. They haven't gone through with it. But that's something that we need to bear in mind. That's almost a public health matter, that people feel that there's no answer to their issues, to their problems, other than taking their own life. So that's the theme today. That's the theme across the world. And thank you, Honourable Hector, for bringing that to the attention of this audience. Honourable Hector also gave out a number of thank yous. Let me add to that. I want to thank Digicel. I want to thank Meridian. I know they've contributed generously to that, to this day. I've heard that they've contributed elsewhere to community civic activities in Montserrat, and so you know, we're grateful for that. Thank you very much, Meridian. I would like to thank Sharice Allen and team. I was involved very heavily on International Men's Day in the years past, but I stepped back this year and it was taken over by Mrs. Allen and her team. So without them, today wouldn't be possible. Ministry of Health and Social Services, of course, who backed it, and our speakers who are coming up, and I'll thank them later. And of course, all men here today for being here. Okay, so what have we got on the program? You may or may not have a program in front of you, but let me tell you, let me go through it briefly. We have Mr. Shane Kennedy. I'm not sure, this is where the technical issues came in terms of hearing him. I'm not sure if we're good for Mr. Kennedy. Are we? Not as yet? Okay, I don't hear. We're good? We're good for him? We can hear his voice?
Hello.
Is that Mr. Kennedy?
Hello.
Ah, excellent. Okay, we were going to do a swap around with the next speaker, but we'll take you now that we can hear you. Just before I come to you, Shane, just 1 minute. Let me outline to the audience here what's coming up. So, in the past for International Men's Day, we've talked all day. We've talked all day, but there's a different flavor today. We're going to talk for half the day, and then the rest of the day is devoted to your wellness and to your well-being. There'll be a number of people and organizations spread out around this hall who will pamper you, who will feed you, who will massage you, who will give you free stuff. and just contribute to your health and wellness. You'll be able to get prostate checks, you'll be able to get blood check, you'll be able to get glucose check, you'll be involved in sports, you'll be involved in recreation. It's just a day or an afternoon for you to kick back and relax and take care of yourself as men. And then hopefully later at 5 o'clock, you go and cheer on Montserrat up at Blake's there. So it's going to be a good day for you today, especially if they win. So, so we have two speakers for you this morning. We have Shane Kennedy, who I shall introduce soon, and following him we have the Reverend Leroy Hodge, who will talk to Unveiling the Mask of Owning My Emotions. But let's not keep Mr. Kennedy waiting. Let me introduce him. So, Mr. Shane Kennedy, who is he? So, he's dedicated his career to the field of mental health. He's currently employed at Mind, which is a mental health charity in the UK. He's overseeing 2 projects focused on supporting beneficiaries in their mental health and well-being journey. He can explain that to us shortly. So in these roles, he uses educational therapy to provide insights and coping strategies to empower individuals to improve their overall well-being, their mental health well-being. He's the proud founder, and director of a non-profit organization, and it involves training and deploying therapy dogs to support service personnel in all 3 branches of the armed forces. So he works closely with the Ministry of Defense and providing therapy to soldiers, sailors, and other people in the armed forces. In essence, he says, his passion lies in the intersection of mental health advocacy and the well-being of individuals and the community. So in that, he aligns with us. He believes through education, therapy, and unconditional support that we can impact the lives of people facing mental health challenges. So he very much looks forward to sharing his insights with us today and having a meaningful dialogue afterwards. So with that, Mr. Kennedy, I hope you heard that. If you've got anything to add, then please do so. But at this stage, I think I'll hand over to you, Mr. Kennedy. Shane Kennedy, the mic is yours. Thank you.
Right, hello everybody. Yeah, thank you for the wonderful introduction there. Hearing it back, I was thinking, cool, blimey, is that me? I'd like to thank you all for taking your time to listen to me today. It's a huge honor to be asked to be a speaker for you. And I'd like to thank the team for asking me and for making this happen. I am very sorry that I'm not there in person to speak to you, because the day sounds amazing that you're putting on. And Lord knows I could do with a little sun. So what we're going to do, I'm going to give you a bit of a talk. I was asked to speak about suicide and depression, and a lot of these things overlap. So you can't really talk about depression without talking about things like anxiety. So I'm also going to talk a little bit about coping strategies within reason, more about understanding, because if we have more understanding of mental health, it's not always as threatening. We can get our heads around it, we can understand it. So that's what I'm going to do today. So yeah, I haven't really got much to add to that intro. That was lovely. My name is Shane Kennedy. Yeah, in case you're wondering why this English geezer's chatting to you and taking up your time, firstly, despite the accent, I'm an Irishman. That's very important, very important. And, you know, I'm leader of 2 teams that work in providing coping strategies and therapy to individuals. So the subject, mental health with men, is a topic that's very close to my heart, and it deserves our collective attention and action. One of the reasons I'm so motivated to speak to you today is because this offers an opportunity to get to the heart of what men's mental health is. And it allows us an opportunity to examine how we can support men in their well-being. Okay, because the truth is, there is inequality when it comes to men and mental health, a big inequality, even here in the UK. We need to create a dialogue that raises awareness, but to save lives, because awareness is not enough on its own. You know, in the UK, there's a huge thing on mental health awareness, but if you ask someone who's in the middle of suffering, has this benefited you directly? Not really. There needs to be outlets for men to get support. But we need to create the dialogue to raise the awareness, and we need to improve the mental health well-being for everyone, because the truth is that if men's well-being is catered for and supported, everyone will benefit. It benefits our families, it will benefit the communities that we serve as men. Men do not like to talk about mental health. Now, there's society expectations and traditional gender roles which play an impact on this. The truth is, men do not feel that they can allow themselves to be vulnerable, and that leads to them feeling shame. So from an early age, we're taught, be strong, boys don't cry, toughen up, man up. Problem with this is it often perpetuates the notion that vulnerability is a liability. It's a sign of weakness. And from this, as we grow into men, this affects how we view emotion and then how we can express it. And this is just further from the truth. I give an example. A woman's just given birth. She's on her own. She's a widow. Let's say her husband or partner's passed away while she was pregnant. Mother and child are incredibly vulnerable. But are they weak? No. No, they're incredible strength. Somebody I actually worked with, they had a speech impediment. And part of the support that they were getting to overcome this, not from me, was to go speak publicly. Now, that individual was in that moment was incredibly vulnerable. Was he being weak? No. So I want to put it to the audience here that vulnerability is in fact the definition of courage, because it allows us to be authentic. What we end up showing to the world as men is one face. We have to put on a facade, and we all do it, even I do. But the reality is we have another face on the inside that we do not show. But people, family, and our communities are dependent on us. We have a job to do. So we need to be seen as strong and invulnerable. Problem with this is we become increasingly insular. We stop communicating. And this means we're more likely to engage in negative behaviors. And these behaviors are usually as a way to control the emotion, control the thought processes. The problem is these negative behaviors, such as self-medication, angry behavior, for argument's sake, they make the situation worse, which we'll go into in a little while. Now, I heard some really good statistics before this session, so I'm going to just add to some of these as well. That, you know, I have no idea about the statistics from Montserrat, but I can give you statistics from where I am from home. 1 in 4 people will have a mental health issue, but that is what is officially diagnosed. So anyone who works in the field generally understands that not everyone will ask for help. Not everyone has been to the doctor and had anything like rubber stamped, you know, there you go, depression, anxiety, bipolar, you name it. So there's an awful lot of people there that fight alone. So realistically, we always say that the number is 1 in 3 people. That's 1/3 of the population. But you don't need to be diagnosed with mental illness to experience ill health. So if you look at physical health, you know, it's unreasonable to expect that you're never ever going to get sick in your life. Sometimes there'll be a cold, you can recover. Sometimes it's more serious and you need further support. But it's the same for mental health. Everybody at some point will experience a bout of mental ill health. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you something, or they're in for a shock. Unfortunately for men, the figures are worse. More women attempt suicide, more men die from it. Men are 3 times more likely to take their life. Men are less likely to access psychological therapies than women. men are more likely to go missing, and men are more likely to become dependent on alcohol and drugs. But without seeking help, men are more likely to commit suicide. And the biggest killer of men under 50 is suicide. Let that sink in. That's the biggest threat that men face. The answer to this problem is complex. We need to start encouraging an open dialogue with men about mental health and physical health, because there's other things that men don't access with physical health as well. More women in the UK get cancer, more men die from it. They don't want to be a burden, they want to tough it out, they're wasting your time by asking for help. It's not good enough. You can do better. With more understanding on the issues of mental health, it may be more likely that gentlemen will reach out. And not just gentlemen, but children. It's quite alarming the amount of young children in school, and not even secondary school and primary school, who are developing symptoms of difficulties with their mental health. We need to get children in early. We need to get that understanding as soon as we can. What we do know is the term man up is not working, and it's shaming our men into silence. So I want you to consider a scenario where a man faces a challenging situation. It could be a personal setback, emotional turmoil, or past abuse. Instead of being encouraged to express vulnerability or seek support, he's told man up. Now that's a command. That's an instruction. A command that simply implies that strength lies in stoicism and suppression of genuine emotion. But this expectation not only discourages emotional expression, but also perpetuates the notion that seeking help is a sign of weakness. So as I said, the emotional difficulties is common, but the way that we deal with it, there is always a logic to it. There's always, when someone comes to me and they're expressing certain symptoms or even behaviors, I can always say, right, I can take you through every symptom you're experiencing and explain why it's there. Okay, it's very interesting stuff. But sometimes, as soon as I've had someone, I've laid it all out for them, it can be quite a shock. It's a bit of a penny dropping moment. And they think, that's me. Oh my God, I didn't realize. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was a reject, less. I thought I was broken, crazy. I thought, no, you're not. It's actually very, very common. It's not abnormal at all. And if I had a pound for every time I've heard these symptoms, be well off. So from my experience, once men start to understand what is going on with them, they feel better equipped to start putting coping strategies in place. But suicide. I find people are scared of suicide. It's a taboo subject. And sometimes it can be seen, if we look at a cultural perspective, as wrong or a sin. Generally, I find there's a lack of understanding on this issue, and how society views it adds layers of complexity to it. We need more empathy towards suicide. Doesn't mean we accept it. It doesn't mean we're happy with it, but men are not cowards for thinking or taking their life, and they are definitely not looking for attention. I'm going to get more into psychology now a little bit. So we all experience what we call fight and flight. Every basic animal on God's earth that can sting you, bite you, or run away from you has this instinct. It's built into us very deeply. Our instinct is always to run, hide from danger, from threats, to live another day, or just get away from the pain. Suicide is a flight behavior in the extreme. You've got to understand a certain logic to it. Suicide should be viewed as an indicator of pain. And we must have more compassion that when someone is in that much pain, the idea of escaping that pain becomes understandably attractive. I had a friend he's an outdoorsman, and he had cancer. Now he beat the cancer, but the effects from the radiotherapy caused incredible pain in his hands. So he had his three fingers, he couldn't use them, they were in the way, and he was in agony. He went to his doctor and said, you know, doc, please take them off. And the doctor was like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And he said to the doctor, doc, take them off or I'm going to do it. So he actually had his fingers removed. Now, it would be absolutely outrageous for us to think, no, that was wrong. You should have kept the fingers. Well, in the same way, we've got to understand that when emotionally pain is that bad, it will drive us to do certain things as well. For men, they think they are less of a man for suffering and that the world is better off without them. They think their family is better off without them. They're just a burden. Their emotional pain doesn't help, it's a burden. Of course, this isn't true, but it's much easier for us to rationalize from a perspective of non-suffering. It's very easy for us to see things in black and white. When you're experiencing emotional turmoil, the way we see the world starts to change, okay, because we're in fight and flight. I heard this mentioned earlier, and it's absolutely important to distinguish between suicide behavior and suicide ideation. Now, if you're working in mental health, this is actually a very important distinction that you need. Someone who is exhibiting suicide ideation is not actually actively planning to take their own life, or at least not yet. They're starting to have intrusive thoughts outside of their control. But when this happens, an individual can and often does feel a lot of shame about this. And that shame can prevent them from wanting to talk to you about it. So it's really important that an individual can discuss these feelings and thoughts in a safe, non-judgmental environment. When we take on new staff, one of the interview questions is on this. We will ask someone who's a prospective candidate, you're working with someone who comes to you and they're expressing thoughts of suicide. What do you do? And what we're looking for is for someone to not freak out when suicide is mentioned. And sometimes that's hard to find. You know, they start calling a crisis team and an ambulance, and it's like, stop. What we're looking for is clarification of intent. Let someone talk, listen to understand, not to respond. That's the difference. So more often, more men will die from suicide, yet more women will attempt it. And this is because when men make a plan to take their life, it's not a call for help, they mean it. So we need to open up dialogue and destigmatize suicide. That way, as rightfully said, I think a couple of times already, prevention will be better than the cure. I really do believe in this. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about depression. Again, it's a bit of a taboo subject, but we'll start off with, I've got, when I'm working with someone and we're doing coping strategies and understanding mental health, I've got 2 golden rules. We'll call them Shano's golden rules. Number 1, you cannot just change your thoughts and emotions like that. You can't. Because if you could, you would have done so a long time ago. And if I had the power to just change your thoughts like that, everyone I meet, I would just end their pain. And I'd be rich. I'd be so rich. So you can't just change it. Now, anything you do that does affect your thoughts has to be a process. So it becomes a behavior, which we're going to talk about, especially for all the guys in the audience. This is good. This hopefully is good stuff for you. So the truth is, if you're suffering and expressing your problems, it's punishable. Usually we sometimes find that when men do help express, it's punishable. So their thoughts are, I shouldn't have done that. So it makes it worse. My second golden rule is you are not responsible for how anyone else thinks, feels, or behaves. True story, you're not. Now, there are some caveats to that. We're responsible for our children, absolutely. And the other caveat is, I would say, abuse. So anything that, you know, that involves that kind of abusive kind of thing, I'm responsible for pain or fear that you've experienced. But outside of that, no, I'm not responsible for how anyone else thinks, feels, or behaves. But the same goes the other way. No one is responsible for how I think, how I feel, and how I behave. If I say, you make me feel this way, I'm allowing you that control over my emotions and thoughts. Don't allow that from anybody who you don't trust. But it also means that you're accountable. And that's my point. It's great because you're in control. You're in control. So that means that you need to make the steps to make any, for want of a better term, improvements to your well-being. And one of the issues is when people have depression is sometimes people can come to me and they know why they're feeling really rough. And that can be helpful. It can, if you know the cause. Sometimes it's not. But sometimes people don't know why they're feeling depressed, anxious, low. And that's a problem because they might have had a great upbringing. They might have a loving family. So they don't feel they can justify their anxiety and their depression. They feel that they should still be grateful and not feel negative. When we talk like that, we're actually taking away their permission to feel what they feel. And that's something we need to check as a society. I've heard recently someone said with lots of depression and even thinking of suicide, and someone said to them, well, at least you're not in Gaza. Like, it's just so inappropriate because they feel guilty for feeling, they feel shame for feeling that way. And guess what? Men climb back into their cave. Yeah, they won't speak up again. Depression and anxiety do not need to be justified. It's indiscriminate. It can affect anyone of any age. And I said earlier, it probably will. So we need to be careful not to shame trigger people who are feeling the effects of poor mental health. It just leads to extra guilt for the sufferer. And depression is not simply feeling unhappy or fed up. With depression, you will feel persistently sad for weeks, months, years, okay? Not a few days. And it will become so strong that it will start to overpower your life and will start to have an impact on your ability to grow, on your ability to function. One of the best examples of depression or even anxiety that I've come across was from a beneficiary I was working with. I've never heard a more eloquent way that it's been put. And they said that it feels like they're underwater. It's dark. There's some light, but it's mostly dark. And instead of them being able to get out of it, the water's really kind of encompassing on them like this. They can't figure out which way to go or how to get out the water. So they start to panic. And that kind of feeling of it all kind of coming down on you, that water, is kind of how it feels. You're out of control. There's no controls for you to fix this. In your thoughts, anyway. That's how it feels. Depression is not a real illness. Depression is a real illness with real physiological symptoms. It's not a sign of weakness, and it's not something you can snap out of by pulling yourself together. It'll have a dramatic effect on your thoughts, emotions, physical symptoms, and your behavior. It can be fatal, and it's killing our men. I want to give you another example of someone who spoke to me. They wanted to speak to me. They had something to say. And it was a 42-year-old male who said to me, he's had depression all his life, never had help for it, but he's been having thoughts of suicide since he was a child. This gentleman had been going through this for 30-ish years, maybe more. That person hadn't asked for help. They didn't know how to ask for help, and they didn't understand what they were going through. So I would have suggested that this individual was not weak. Yeah. They were really tough. They had been dealing with this depression alone every day. And every day they had won. They were still alive. They were surviving. Every day they had survived. But this is a kind of a story that is too common Imagine going decades without getting any help. So we're going to go through some understandings and coping strategies, which I think will really help your audience. So negative thinking. We're all negative thinkers as human beings. We've got 70,000 thoughts per day, give or take. 80% of all of those thoughts are negative. So that means that when we're looking at positive and negativity, we need 2 positives for every 1 negative. And what I mean by this is it's absolutely built into us to be a little bit more negative. So if you think of the natural world, if you've got a deer on one side or a rabbit or something, if you've seen them in the wild, they're never just relaxed and chill. They're always kind of, they'll chew the grass, nom, 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 and then they're always looking and sniffing around at everything. I call it the did I leave the gas on look. And then they run. On the opposite side of that spectrum, you've got a lion, a big carnivore who can easily sleep 20 hours a day because, let's face it, nothing's really going to try and eat that lion and his pride. So he's not alone. But we're on that scale. We're not quite where the deer is, but about 80% of us, we're very sensitive to negativity. And the reason for that is it's negative thoughts stop us from doing stupid stuff. Yeah. We err on the side of caution. So I want to give you another example. If I was teaching this to a group of, say, 20 people, I was teaching this, I'd use this as an example. How many of you are scared of spiders? And you get maybe 2 out of 20 kind of like put their hand up and go, ooh, don't even talk about spiders. Ooh, terrible. Cool. So that means 18 out of 20 are fine with spiders, happy, great. How many of them would go and just pick up a huge spider in their house and take it out with their hands? Maybe 2. That's the thing. As soon as we get, this is instinctual, inbuilt, intrinsic psychology to get us to not do stupid stuff. So we get some big spiders in the UK. They're not dangerous, but they look like they want to rob you. They're kind of really that big. So even me, I'm like, no, I'll get a glass and take it out. Now you'll always get 2 people in the group who will, and they'll be you know who they are because they're looking around at everybody, really smug. Kind of, I don't know what the problem is. I just pick them up with my hand. And what they don't realize is from an evolutionary standpoint, they're the freaks. Yeah, that's the abnormal stuff because they're going to get in trouble. They're going to get bit, that kind of thing. So it's normal to be negative, but what happens is it gets out of hand, big style. So what we do is when we encounter difficulties is we experience what's called automatic negative thoughts, knee-jerk thinking. So what I mean by knee-jerk negative thought, okay, imagine this. You come into work in the morning, you get an email from your boss, Shane, please could you come and see me as quick as you can? How many would be thinking, oh, that's nice, I get to have a chat with my boss. That'd be lovely, groovy. No, I'm thinking, yeah, what have I done? Oh my goodness, am I in trouble? Where could I have messed up? Oh, that's what we do. We knee jerk to that negative side. So we end up going through all our stuff, and it never was a problem in the first place. You turn up and you get a pay rise or something like that. So our thoughts have gotten out of hand. So there's 2 key words for this: bias and interpretation. We all have bias. Yeah, we have about the world around us and also about ourselves. But this can lead to interpretations of what we see and what we think. And this is called cognitive fusion. This is quite a groovy thing. So what we do is we see something and we make up a story. And cognitive fusion is like this. We fuse together thoughts and reality. So an example of that would be, for instance, I can't see any of you here. It's kind of a blank screen. So I could easily be thinking, oh, they're not enjoying this. They don't like me at all, which is just a thought. Could be true, but it's unlikely because, to be fair, I'm a delight. So That's the thing. It's easy to distinguish this when you're in a good place, but when you are not in a good place, when there's a lot of stress involved, then being able to distinguish and defuse that apart, thought and fact, becomes very difficult. And the truth is, our thoughts can become biased, misrepresented. Guys, they can just be plain wrong. Okay. And it's easy to see that when we're very relaxed and chilled. So we need to diffuse our thoughts and think about dissonance. Now, the other thing to this is dissonance, cognitive dissonance. Now, some of these big words like cognitive dissonance, don't worry about what they mean. I'm not trying to get you into college. I'm trying to get you out of the house. Yeah, I'm trying to make you feel better. So you don't need to understand remember what the words are. But dissonance is when we have the original negative thought and the emotion, because it always starts with the thought, but then we add fuel to the fire. We justify the thought in the first place. You ever try to cheer someone up or work with someone and they say they're really worried about something? And you think, well, actually, there's a lot of evidence to say that that's not going to happen, to be honest. And they're not having it. It's called they're not having it. We know when people are like that because they'll use terms like, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. And what they're doing there, and that's a behavior, is they then justify the thought and the emotion. An example of this would be flat Earth society peoples. So they think the world is flat. And we might giggle at that. And it's okay to giggle at that because it's non-threatening to us. Yeah, it doesn't affect us. But when you give someone from flat Earth all the evidence, like, there's photographs there's a curvature of the Earth. Yeah, no, but they made it up. No, and they're not having it. So it's very hard to work on anyone who's unwilling to a reinterpretation of their situation. Okay, and that's really important with mental health. The individual needs to be ready for a possibility of a reinterpretation. Because if not, when this happens, everything we encounter is negative because it becomes an automatic way of interpreting and responding to things. Over time, we develop neurological pathways in the brain, literally like neurological highways. And they start to fire really quickly when encountering new things. So we become very highly trained in negativity. We're like highly trained negative ninjas. That makes sense. So in tackling anxiety, depression, well, this is where kind of the crux of it is. The key to influencing our thoughts and our emotions is in what we do. Remember what I said, you can't just change thoughts like that. Anyone who tells you can is selling you something. Hey, this book, buy this book. It's 5 easy ways to positive think. Yeah. If it was that easy, yeah. Remember, we have 70,000 thoughts per day. So that means that our thoughts every day are in and out, in and out, in and out. It's very, very quick. So how many of those thoughts per day do you think you remember or are consciously aware of in the moment? It's about 10%. So what we do is, the best way to look at this is like an iceberg. So anyone knows anything about an iceberg is much bigger than you think because the mass of it is under the water unseen. And this is a good way to categorize between cognitive thoughts and subconscious thoughts. The subconscious thoughts are thoughts that we don't really register specifically in the moment. But what often drives us automatically, what influences our thoughts, emotions, and our behavior are the subconscious thoughts. And for instance, trauma creates an awful lot of subconscious thoughts deep down under that water that can't be seen, but definitely affects our day-to-day living. So this also means that the individual may not be aware of the thought process. He may not be aware of the thoughts, but they may be more aware of how they feel physically and their behavior. So saying, cheer up, this doesn't help. They don't even know what the thought is that they need to cheer up. So you might remember I spoke about fight or flight, and on that a little bit more. We have two parts of our brain. The prefrontal cortex, which is like at the front, yeah, and it's massive, it's huge, and it's on the outside, and evidence has shown it's gotten bigger as we've evolved and grown and stuff. And it's our genius part of the brain. It's the kind of conscious, rational thinking part of the brain. Opposed to that, in the very core of our brain, is called the amygdala. In America, they call it the amygdala because they are wrong. And what that does is that is responsible for all instinct. So what happens is whenever we are confronted with a threat, whether it's real or a perception, yeah, an ancient day threat like being attacked like coming across a bear in the woods, or a modern day threat like my boss wanting to speak to me out of the blue, the prefrontal cortex will shut down and the amygdala starts to fire up. That means we are less likely to think balanced, helpful thoughts because our amygdala is not consciously aware of the world around us. It's not paid to care what is actually going on. And as far as it's concerned, you're welcome because you're still alive. It's had you surviving all this time. So what the amygdala will do, it'll send you into fight or flight. And things start to shut down. And we're driven by the instinct to survive. So our ability to think goes out the window. Our ability to speak goes out the window. Just two examples. If you've ever been put on the spot with a question that you might have known, what's the answer to this question? What do? We go, we become monosyllabic. Things have started to shut down. And all we want to do is run. Secondary to that is fight. But it's not fight necessarily because we don't have teeth, the claws, you know, that kind of thing. So why am I telling you this? Well, remember I said that negativity is more powerful than positivity in weight, if we look at it that way. That means that our behaviors that we develop then influence our thoughts. And it gets worse and worse and worse. So the initial cause of it is over here. It doesn't matter. The symptoms become self-perpetuating. The symptoms become the actual issue. And it becomes like negativity is like a negative spiral. Gravity helps it gain momentum. Now, the mechanics work the same with positive thoughts, but you need more effort. You need to push it up. So positive spirals upwards. So we need to work at it. We need consistent, conscious behaviors that are helpful, that will reverse engineer backwards. And all this is automatic. It happens exceptionally quick. Behavior is the only thing that you can control. Out of the thoughts, emotions, yeah, behavior is the quickest thing that you've got to control. When we're looking at like cognitive behavioral therapy, you know, that's where we kind of look for. An example of this, to all the gentlemen and people who have attended today, does turning up automatically make you feel 100%? No, probably not. Because you can't just control your thoughts and emotions. I'm going to say it again, you know, once I said it again, you would have done so already, but you turned up today. And that is the point. You managed to turn up today in spite of your thoughts and emotions. And that is where the power is for you guys. Positive behavior or helpful behavior will reverse engineer back through your physical symptoms, your emotions, and your thoughts. They won't fix them, but they will have an impact. And over time, the more that we put in place coping strategies, the better, you know, you work on this process. If you hang around a barbershop long enough, you will end up with a haircut. If you keep at it, it works. I ain't got the energy to tell you that it works when it just doesn't. Not in mental health, it's too hard. So an example of this, let's say you start to use relaxation when you're really stressed and anxious, and you think, right, I'm gonna do some just breathing, just to realign the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So the behavior is your breathing, your physical symptoms will feel a little bit relaxed, not relaxed, but a little bit relaxed. Emotionally, you feel a little bit calmer, not calm, but calmer. Well, if the behavior changed, physical symptoms have been affected, your emotions have been affected, then the law of that model demands that your thoughts will rebalance. They have to, because they're all interlinked. So if you think of an example of an exam, you're a week away from doing an exam. It's a very important exam. You've worked very hard toward the sixth exam, but you are freaking out. You are like proper anxious. There are certain behaviors you could start doing that will make it worse. Behavior, avoidance of revision. You could start going out and drinking, doing drugs, self-medication, again, which is again as a flight behavior if you really want to look at it. They will make your worse. The initial thought might be, what if I fail this exam? They start to become is, I can't cope. I can't do this. And especially because it goes downwards, it gets worse and worse. If we go from the simple negative thoughts to the, I can't cope with this. I can't do this. I need out. And it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse. So putting in positive behaviors, there are two types. Direct and indirect behaviors. Now, direct behaviors would be what directly influences the outcome specific to what's going on. So advising, talking to your tutor, that kind of thing. That's more specific to the exam, so it might directly what's going on. But then we've got indirect behaviors, such as to stop and breathe. You could say challenge your thoughts, you know? You could look at your sleep, your well-being. Now that has no influence directly on you answering questions in an exam, but we do know it makes a positive, powerful impact, because when we make a conscious choice to do something, change the part of the brain that we use. We said amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, caveman brain, and the big genius part. When you start to do something, a behavior, the amygdala has to subjugate down, it slows down, and the prefrontal cortex starts to fire up. You're more likely to develop more balanced, helpful thoughts and interpretations. So if you're looking for the exam example again, you start thinking, I can't cope, and you might start to think more helpful behaviors such as, I'll do the exam. If I fail, I'll know why I failed and I'll retake it. And I'll be better next time because I'll know where I went wrong. Now that is much more helpful. Now, this is something that, you know, when you take people through it and take them through this, they start to understand. It starts becoming that monster in the corner, and they start to almost make it their own. They start to understand their own mental health, what's going on, and what they can do about it. So if you want to change your thoughts, change your behaviors. So summing up, putting in helpful behaviors is very powerful for three reasons. Number one, it will give you a sense of control over your life when previously it's been feeling out of control and all help is faded. Remember what I said about underwater, that analogy I used? A sense of control is like a ladder rung out of the water. You've gotten some control back over your life, where before it didn't feel like you were controlling what was going on, it felt like it was controlling you. Number two, as I said, you change part of the brain that you're using from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. You develop different neurological pathways in the brain. So now your brain has a choice of different ways to respond to things in the world. And then there's three, the direct effect on the behavior, such as breathing will relax you down. So in conclusion, I would like to say empowerment in action. As we conclude, I want you to remember, mental health transcends gender, vulnerability is strength, and seeking help is an act of courage. We need to challenge stereotypes daily. We need to foster open conversations, and we need to be an ally. To all my brothers in the room, or my fathers in the room, my nephews, your mental health matters. It's okay not to be okay. Embrace the support that's available and open up. Replace man up would speak up, and collectively we can all shift this narrative. And I want you to remember that you have worth and value. Your family needs you, your community needs you, the world does need you, and you need them. And in your daily interactions, be compassionate, challenge stigma, and encourage positive change. So in small steps, we can create a community where everyone's mental health becomes a priority. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time and openness and having me today. And as we say in Ireland, Gormachgat Slangafoil Slancha. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you very much, wellness coach, Mr. Shane Kennedy. You said a whole lot. It was a lot for us to conceptualize. There are a lot of terminology that you may have used, and we thank you for the opportunity for sharing with us today. I just want to remind all the men in our audience today that the main theme, overarching theme, is about men matters, embrace, empower, elevate for a positive transformation. And this will just fit in ideally with the idea of zero suicide, which is the concept internationally for today's celebration of International Men's Day. Right. At this stage, before we bring on the next speaker, we're going to allow some questions to Mr. Shane Kennedy. So anybody up for questions? And while you're getting yourself geared for questions, I just want to identify some areas that Mr. Kennedy touched on. Right? He talked about suicide and suicidal ideation. He spoke about bias and interpretation. He spoke about the importance and the occurrence of cognitive fusion. He talked about cognitive dissonance. This may just some mental health concepts that and psychological concepts that some may or may not be known to, but it's nothing to confuse yourself about. He also talked about we normally have more negative thoughts than positive thoughts, so your day basically is spent trying to counter the negative thoughts with positive thoughts to be able to lead a productive day and a productive life, if you will agree with me, right? Another area that he identified was about the importance of helpful behavior. Helpful behavior meaning action, involving yourself in positive activity as opposed to negative activity, which maybe we could identify as social issues, possibly crime and negative impact. And another important thing that he talked about is about having a highly trained negative ninjas within ourselves, whereas we are always being challenged with negative ideologies, negative ideas, negative thoughts and emotions. So we have to build our resilience, which will engage with or really involve about engaging in positive thoughts and positive engagement with others. At this time, I will open the floor for any questions to Mr. Kennedy.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Kennedy. You spoke about morning. You spoke about suicidal rate among men very high, and it seems that it appears to me that women would have instigated it because they survive most of it. I'm asking, what has been done to assist men since that the rate is so high? That's my question.
In short, that's a really good question. What has been done?
Thank you.
My initial response, I want to say, is not enough. It's a quite simple one, not enough. There's a lot of good stuff that goes on in regards to groups and mental health awareness. In the UK, we do actually have a very good program. locally to us, because there's nothing really nationally. It kind of comes down to local authorities doing what they need to do. And a lot of this kind of stuff is based on third sector and charities doing the work. So we've got a really good organization, and it's to do with men and sport. Because if you can get men engaging in stuff which is appropriate for them, fixing up a community, it could be working on an old car engine or something like that, or sport, they may be more likely to talk, because the concept is quite good for them. If you get them in a circle and say, okay, men, how are you feeling? They're going to close up straight away. So we've got this program is called Balls to Talk. It's a clever name as well, because you're dealing with football sports at the same time it's dealing with mental health and physical health, like testicular and cancer. I think awareness is really important, but we also need to make provisions as well. It's great to say to men, you need to talk. You need to provide where they can talk, and that's, I think, we still need to improve on.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Wade, thank you for your question. But before I go on to the next question, I just want to piggyback on something Dr. Sinclair said earlier on. This society may not have had a suicide in the last 3 years, but we also had numerous suicide ideation issues, which amount to close to 100 plus. So it is a concern for us in the society.
Good morning. Based on
Hello.
your statistics, can you break it down, or did you break it down into any particular ethnic group? And also what factor external pressure play on these people? Because I know, for instance, in North America, there's certain ethnic group, and the parents put so much pressure on the children, especially college-age children, that if they're not living up to their expectation, they figure they're disappointing their parents, and they figure they must find an easy way out. So, especially among certain ethnic group, have your statistics or survey cover any particular group in which suicide rate is higher?
That's a really good question. I'll be completely honest with you. Off the top of my head, no. Suicide. Probably there are certain denominators, such as poverty. So that would, if you break it down within the UK, you might find in one part of the country the suicide is high, but possibly for different reasons. So, for instance, in more rural agricultural areas, the suicide can be quite high for white men, because all of a sudden you've had foot and mouth, and people have lost their entire livelihood. Their lives have been absolutely that's it, it's over. You can't come back from that. And suicide would become quite. Within inner cities, you might find that with one of the biggest denominators is poverty. And so, for instance, in London, one of the biggest things for that would probably be pushed more towards ethnic groups like young black men. I will say that men generally don't get enough coverage, but young black men need more to support. Yeah, because there are certain needs within that subgroup, which, I mean, I can talk from my background, which is Irish. That's incredible. I mean, the suicide for Irish is much higher than it should, is acceptable. But again, you're talking poverty, and within mental health, I haven't really said this, but I had somebody who said to me, it was a doctor from overseas, and he said, forgive me for going on this important point. He said, I don't do mental health. I don't agree with it. And he said he was talking to a pastor about it, and they said he would send them all out with shovels and make them work. That'll sort them out. And I was absolutely disgusted, but I held it well, because I thought, wow, you punish people for feeling the way that they feel. And he asked me, because I work for health, and I said it straight away: abuse. That's another thing we need to talk about. And I think that is massive for men, victims of childhood abuse, who have never, ever been able to come forward because of the shame of it. The 1 in 4 young people in the UK will have experienced abuse, which is outrageously high. You know, it's any abuse is unacceptable, any suicide is unacceptable. When you start putting that alongside people who experience mental health, their correlation is exceptionally high. And we also need to start looking at that big style as well, because it's just not acceptable.
Hello, Shane. If I can come back, unless anybody else had any questions. Well, thank you for your presentation, Shane. It was excellent. I know I didn't give the context to inviting you. It was because one of our own, I think Lester Ryan, stayed with you for a while on placement there, and he came back full of praise. He's waxing lyrical about his time there and about you, and you didn't disappoint. So thank you very much. Can I have a question just to touch on that last question though, in terms of the because you started talking about inequality in mental health, and that straight away took me to the racial inequality hinted at by our last questioner. And poverty does play a part, but we can't escape naked racism in how that affects and continues to reflect black people, and especially black males in the UK, in terms of the criminalization from all quarters, justice system, in housing, in employment, all the way through, that exerts a huge effect that results in suicide being the #1 killer for black men in the UK and the US. So there's some stark inequalities there. In our, But my question to you really pertains to children and mental health, because you touched on that. And in Montserrat now, I know that there was a survey done a few years ago, household survey, where we found that a number of children were drinking, and that they had a number of mental health issues, but they chose not to report or talk about it because they were concerned about other issues such as confidentiality. So that in a small community, those issues come to the fore. I wonder though, in terms of children and their mental health, and the rise of social media and all these social media sites, which puts pressure on young people to look a certain way, to act a certain way. What can we do about that in a small island as Montserrat? Have you got any thoughts on that, and how we can stop the next generation from sliding into those kind of behaviors?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I really welcome the information you said previously about, in the UK as well. It's absolutely true. We need more dialogue and open conversation about things like social media and for young people. I think one thing that slowly I've seen happen, which is really good. I've got a 4-year-old daughter at school, and you find that the school system is starting to work on understanding our own mental health a little bit more. And she comes home, so they practice the breathing, they practice understanding our emotions and big feelings, which is really, really good at that age. You can't start early enough. Things like pressures like social media, absolutely. And not just social media, but all the equipment that we're using. A young person, you won't get them off their phone. And I used to find that I used to coach sport as well at the university. And I used to find, or used to think at least, is this affecting their ability to communicate? Because you do sometimes find, if you try and start up a conversation, they can't. They look like face to face. I can't handle this. I've even I once said to my nephew, I was trying to find out about his life and what's going on, and I went all like, sure. Would it be easier if I texted you this? Because I'm getting nothing from you. And I think there is some evidence as well come through that I haven't read through in detail, but children who use mobile phones, there's new evidence to say that it is affecting their mental health, because things like constantly, the switching, the constant scrolling is affecting their dopamine response patterns. So they're getting addicted. Okay. And we all know this. What would you do without your mobile phone for a week if it broke? There's a problem. There's a proper problem. So I think we need more dialogue about this. Generally, for children in school, I'm a huge advocate in getting children to explore their feelings, how to express themselves, what anxiety is. the idea of fight and flight, you know, that kind of thing is really, really good. And I think the more informed people are and children, the more empowered they are.
Good day. Is it Mr. Shane? Mr.
Yes.
Shane, yeah. Suicidal thought. Okay, guess you gather some. But the truth about it, it come from all different angles. Make your mind personal experience. All right? Me pick up one pinch nerve in my back. Well, really, the doctor said that in the spine. But the truth about it, me never really feel the pain in the spine. The pain come to the hip, then it come down my foot, down to the ankle. One night, if anybody tell me that me could go through one entire night without sleep, me to tell any lie. But me experience that, right? Now, suicidal thoughts come because of the pain that me may bear, right? But me a biblical individual too. So because me biblical, I recognize, well, if you kill yourself, you're gone hellbound. That are the only reason why me not take my life. Because of the pain. You get that? Not no other thing, the pain. But yeah, I think a little reasoning behind of it. When you think about to do something, if you listen good, you hear one of the voice tell you not do it. You get that?
Yeah.
And because the other voice may recognize who the other voice be. But the voice now that I tell you to do it, because me know the biblical again, you know, the thief come to kill, steal, and to destroy. So that are the only. So it come in different ways. Some people got them, but they're not share. So you might not get the stats, right? But it come in different ways. Suicidal come to me different time, but it all time be one little vice behind of the vice for do it. Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Makes perfect. Yeah. I mean, makes perfect sense what you're saying. And no one can blame you for having those thoughts. You know, one of the what we call protective features that you're talking about, for some people it's the family, for some people it's religion. You know, what stops you from doing it? But I think what you've done is you've very well just highlighted what I was saying in what my talk was. When you're in that much pain and agony and you can't sleep, these thoughts are natural. They start to occur, and we certainly shouldn't penalize men for doing that. We need to open up so they feel that they can express this. They feel that they can turn up and say, listen, whether you think it's wrong or right, this is my thought. I'm having these thoughts to take my life because I'm in that much pain. And when you look at it through a different megascope, you start to see, well, actually, there's a logic to that. I completely understand why you're having thoughts at times to take your life. And everyone's different. You said, from your perspective, that's where it came from. You know, some people with mental health, they might have a lovely home, a great job, a loving family, and yet, so sometimes we can almost not want to give them permission to suffer. And that is, again, the take-home message is intrusive thoughts and mental health is indiscriminate.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Quickly, if I could just surmise that for the callers, as one caller indicated earlier, that environmental factors, so you could have suicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts from emotional issues, physiological issues like you, mental issues, right, and environmental issues, and social issues, particularly like income issues and housing issues. So many different factors can contribute. But however, we are at this time that we want to progress with the other parts of the program. At this stage, I want to thank Mr. Shane Kennedy, wellness coach, for his time with us this morning and imparting his knowledge and information for us and the audience. We thank you very much for your time, sir, and we appreciate your contribution this morning. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. Take care.
Right. Before we have the next speaker on board, before I bring the next speaker on board, Mr. Reverend Leroy Hodge, Antiguan by birth, married for 22 years with 2 children, 20 years in ministry, ordained minister. He loved the hospitality industry and food and music, and he will be coming to bring his point of view on this discussion as it relates to mental health and its support systems today. Give him our hearty welcome to the podium. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Just one disclaimer. If I tell any jokes, I'm not saying they're not made up, just that I didn't make them up. All right? I once heard of a story with a man that used to go to a bar every day and had 3 drinks. He used to go by himself, but he used to drink for 3, himself and his 2 brothers. Over time, he started to only have 2 sets of drink. So the bartender asked him, what happened? Did somebody die? He said no. One of his brothers decided to stop drinking, so he's only drinking. No, he decided to stop drinking, so he's only drinking for his 2 brothers now. I am here to speak to you about alcohol and drugs misuse. And you might be wondering, why is it somebody standing up there speaking to me about alcohol and drug misuse, and he's wearing a clerical collar? Why is a priest talking to me about the misuse of drugs and alcohol? I have a question for you. Has anybody in here ever used drugs? You notice my hand is up, right? Has anybody in here ever used drugs? Yes, ever used drugs? You're all lying. I said drugs. I ain't defining nothing. Has anybody in here ever used drugs? I have. You see, drugs is anything that's chemical, that's taken in, whether as a pill, liquid, and has the power to change another's behavior. Remember, not all drugs are illegal. I suppose you hesitated because you figure I was trying to tie you up. And you figure there might be a police here, or there might be one listening, and you don't want to give away yourself. So let me make that clear. There's a police there. See that? I didn't even know. I am not talking about illegal drugs. Because alcohol is not illegal, is it? No, but it's considered a drug. And it's one of the drugs that's more readily available. In fact, the first time I consumed alcohol was in my parents' house. Literally. Not that I had to hide to do it, but the beer was in the fridge. It was a Carib. I wanted to see what it tastes like, and so I went and I had the beer. So it is readily available. Now we use alcohol for different reasons. We use it to fit in. We use it to be part of the group. We use it because of peer pressure. Often when we hear peer pressure, we naturally think of young people. But peer pressure exists even without adults. Grown men who knows that having the other drink may make all the difference, but nonetheless, they still take it. The fact of the matter is, alcohol and drug misuse is more common than we believe. Primarily, not illegal drugs, because for many of us, or many of you, illegal drugs probably never even cross your thoughts. You know what they are, and you avoid them at all costs. Nevertheless, alcohol, which we don't often put into the category of drugs, is on almost every supermarket shelf in Montserrat and within the Caribbean. It's easy to get. Most times you walk into a shop and they don't even ask you your age. Like in my case, I was always a big fella for my age. So it was easy to get alcohol to buy because one naturally assumed I was 18 and old enough to buy this alcohol. But in some instance, that was not the case. And it was readily available. Now, the question is, what do we do in this context? We live in a society where it seems okay for these things to happen. Now, unveiling the mask and our emotion. Emotion and men seemingly don't always go together because our society don't expect us to be soft. They don't expect us to cry. They don't expect us to show emotion. They say we are weak. And very often that is not the case. Sometimes all that happens to us as men is that we act in a way that society expects us to act like. Mature, grown up, unmoved by certain circumstances. So we stay strong, we stay brave. And to the public, we show no emotion. Yet behind closed door or at a later date, we have a drink to take the edge off, to relax, or to get what we sometimes refer to as liquid courage. Like I said, alcohol within itself is not necessarily bad because one of Jesus' first miracles was turning water into wine. And not just any wine, but according to Scripture, the very best there was. So alcohol within itself is not wrong. And I would never stand here and say to you, don't consume an alcoholic drink. Because like you clearly heard, even this clergyman would have at some point. The misuse, however, of alcohol is what we're concerned about. Having more than you should, having it under circumstances that will impair or cause you to make decisions, that doesn't make sense. Like driving under the influence is never a good thing because it will affect you, it could affect your community, and it could certainly affect your family. Alcohol will impair your decision making. You might not be able to make proper and sound decision or judgment if you have too much alcohol. So the fact of the matter is, and I'm not standing up here to tell you, you can't have a drink. What I'm saying to us is to consider the amount of drinks we have, how we have them, and the circumstances under which we have them. They alter our emotion. They change our capacity to think clearly and to make sound decisions. We live in a culture, like I say, where men is expected to be macho. If you go out with the boys and they offer you a drink and you say, no, it's all right, or I'll just have water, sometimes they look at you and ask you, why you play? Since when you like that? You don't drink anymore? They put you in a spot. And because we're men who don't want to seem like softy to our friends, we say, okay, give me one. One leads to two, two leads to three, and then all kind of things start to happen. Men, it is okay to show emotion. It is okay to say, no, I do not want, or I do not want the other one. It is okay not to live up to the expectation of society as far as it is concerned that it is macho to do certain things as men. It is okay to show emotion. It is okay to be considered soft, but not soft in a sense where you allow yourself to be pushed over or for things to be done for you, to you. But soft in a sense to let those around you, your friends, your family, your children, know it's okay. And if by chance alcohol is abused, it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean that that is the end of things or the end of life. It just means something went wrong, something happened. The chance and the opportunity is always there to support from friends, family, the church, other institutions around us, that things can change. Remember, our attitude, our approach, our mindset to all of this makes all the difference to the outcome of the situation. I remind us, it is okay to have a drink. What is not okay is to abuse the situation where it alters your emotion to the point where you're unable to make sound, ethical decisions that might inevitably affect yourself, your family, and your relationship. So always remember and always consider, before you take that extra drink, or you take some kind of drugs, even regular medication that you might have, taking it outside the conformed dosage or how it should be taken can be considered misuse. So in that case, follow the instructions, and remember, the decisions we make as men doesn't just affect us, but it affects a society, a nation, and our family. Thank you very much for your time, for listening.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, could you please remind us what the scripture said about strong drink?
That's why I left it out, because that would have been the question. Strong drink is a rage and a mockery and all. I know you would have bring up that. But I go right back to the point of Jesus' miracle. Alcohol within itself is not bad. In fact, alcohol is very important in medicine. So alcohol within itself is not bad. Because yes, I think everybody is watching, so I have to be careful. You honestly think that this whole party took place and Jesus himself didn't have one? It's a question, don't answer. Yeah, you don't answer. But what I'm saying, it is not the alcohol within itself. In fact, at church on a Sunday morning, wine is consecrated and turned into the blood of Christ. But at the end of the day, there is still some alcoholic content within that wine. The priests have some and the rest of the congregation is shared. Nobody leaves church drunk. Everybody leaves under the normal situation and condition. It is not the alcohol itself, it's the treatment of the alcohol, what we do to it and how we use it. In fact, some of the doctors these days recommend 1 glass of red wine for your heart, right? Yes. So it's okay to have a little. Just don't have more than you know you're able to think clearly and to impair your decision.
You're going to answer that?
Which worm? Or you want the story with the worm and the worms that was shown in the alcohol, and the child was asked, what do you learn from this? And okay, well, there's one joke about that, let me add. And the child, and they throw the worm in the alcohol and the worm died. And then they asked the child, what did you learn from this? The child hopefully was supposed to say, don't drink alcohol, but the child in turn says, when you have worm, drink alcohol. Correct. Right?
Good day, everybody. I'm checking the program, and the program says that at 11, we should be having Goa water and pumpkin soup. I just wanted to make that point first, because it's 11:05.
Okay.
And I haven't had breakfast as yet. Anyway, on a serious note, I know that you've seen a lot of emotion, grief, because of your work. My question is, how dangerous is emotional mask? How dangerous is emotional mask?
It is an extremely dangerous thing in that. And I often make reference to the fact that you see a lot of people every day and they look okay. In fact, you might see the person quite happy, literally smiling and laughing all the time. Simply because, as well as men, and I keep saying this, society somehow puts that added pressure on us that we have to suck it up, be strong for whoever. I say to us, that is not necessarily so. In fact, it is quite dangerous. When my grandmother passed away, for that same purpose of what society expects, I sucked it up. I didn't cry when everyone else around me was doing just that. Funeral came again, everybody cried. And because I was part of this service, I couldn't cry in this public. And so I sucked it up. Months after, one day I was going through the house cleaning, and without warning, I started to cry. Not just cry, but cry to the point where my body physically was in extreme pain. Shortness of breath, pain in my back, pain in my side, to the point where I had to lie down on the bed because I couldn't catch myself. Because I gave in to the peer pressure of thinking that I couldn't cry when I should have, I didn't grieve. And because of that, that emotional barrier, that grief came back at a point where I didn't expect it, and it came back, I suppose, twice as hard or worse, to the point that it almost cost me some serious problem mentally and even physically. So emotional mask is dangerous. It is okay, men, to express yourself. We have emotions, and it's okay for people to know we are emotional creatures too. In fact, if we had no emotions, how would we expect to love our children and our family? This takes emotion. So it's okay to take the mask off and allow people to know, hey, there is another side to you. There's another side to me. No one would think less of you.
Okay, thank you for that. Just reminding all the audience that we have a time scale. We're going to be working on, we have the snacks here, right? So we're going to take 2 more questions and we'll move to the next. Yeah.
Yes, my question is, you are a preacher. You decide that you're going to allow peer pressure to prevent you from showing your emotion, from crying over the death of your grandmother.
I wasn't a priest then, but go ahead.
Oh, well, we didn't make that clear. Because we were saying, even Jesus Christ, when he walked the earth, when his friend Lazarus died, he gave way to tears. So he showed his emotions. So since you were not a priest then, I'll let it stay here.
Thank you. We have 2 questions. We're going to take one. All right? We have one in the center. Sir, are you interested still? Could you give way, please, sir?
Thank you very much. I just wanted to follow up on the point, because the World Health Organization has now said there is no safe consumption level, full stop. So in terms of public health, I have a responsibility to make that announcement. We just concluded the SDG audit for Montserrat, all about public health. So I was personally reminded about certain things. And the second thing I want to say is that your point is valid in terms of the scriptural references, but what I would want us to be cautious about is not using that as a license.
Of course not.
Because, first of all, that was one day in their whole life.
Of course not.
One day in their whole life. And we don't actually read that he consumed any. Right. He was making a greater point. If you're faithful and you respond, something marvelous will happen beyond what people expect. Right. The other part is, I think that the danger is our environment is so permissive and tempestuous, and there's so many temptations. We don't need to give any more encouragement. I'd be more asking you about how do we deal with temptation? How do we avoid like the compromising circumstances that you mentioned, where you go into a social setting and now the people who are there are encouraging you to do the wrong thing?
Just know yourself and know, like I said, it's okay to say no. And even when you're pressured into doing it, just don't give in. Have faith and stay strong and said, no, I'm not going to do this because I don't want to do this. It will affect me in a way that I don't want. So no matter what, I'm not going to do this.
Okay, we have a next question, sir. Final.
The final one. Clergy. You say, you know, it's okay to drink because, and you give some example. The doctor say, you know what I mean, so forth.
The doctor suggests you don't have to.
Yeah. And you say, even my clergy even drink, but tell the people, let them not take that as one example. Because the clergy probably can drink 5 bottles, but then somebody else just smell and they're out of control, right? Well, me used to live with a doctor. And the doctor say that the human body, believe it or not, when it was created, alcohol a part of the human body. So you got certain time, even sugar, you know, certain time your sugar go low, so you have to get on mint or something. You got certain time now that you, alcohol, and plenty them, even if you don't drink, you use alcohol. Because plenty them processing food and so. They use alcohol and so for process them. Exactly. So even you drink milk, alcohol in there. You get that? Of course, the seal for seal the can and so forth and so. Yeah. So, anyway, you say a little good part that me want everybody. If you know you cannot control it, leave it. Okay.
Thank you very much.
I'm no expert though, but I somehow don't think there's alcohol in milk. But it's worth repeating that, because I think you probably said something in a way I didn't intend it, and I probably didn't say it that way. No, I don't say clergy drink like that. I said I would have had a drink already. Right? Okay. Right? Okay. Just making that clear that I'm not giving license or saying that at all. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for your insight. You touched on a lot of areas today. You talk about positive masculinity. What is positive masculinity? That a man can cry, a man can feel emotions, as opposed to negative masculinity, where persons are groomed thinking that they are not to feel soft, they are supposed to be proven always strong and willing, and could be even abusive. So thank you very much for that. At this time, I want to mention that we're going to be having some booths on display. We'll have barbering, which should be a free option today. We're going to have PSA tests for men, because today is all a celebration for all you men here present. We're going to have massages. The first 6 men will be having the first a PSA test free. First 6 men, next 12 will have to pay 50%. I think this is a good offer. You should utilize it. This will be done by the DR Diagnosis. We'll also have board games, dominoes, checkers, card games today. We'll also have virtual games for the young at heart, the FIFA and Call of Duty. Just remembering that all of this is being done from the Ministry of Health, Education and Social Services staff, also with the support from Meridian and other agencies on the island. Yes, we cannot minimize the support from Meridian for providing their support today, and in financial support and other areas. At this stage, yeah, we also, we're going to have a spa facility, facility for men today. Today is all about celebrating our men, which is culminating with International Men's Day. Anything I missed, Miss? We're going to have our glucose testing, blood pressure testing at that area down there, right? She's already set up and ready to work. We're going to have the areas here will be identified. Men will be pampered today. In essence, men will be pampered today. Before we go any further, quickly, you will notice just in keeping it, supporting men and pampering men, where you sit right now, look and see if you have a tag right in front of your seat. Just raise your hand if you have a tag right in front of your seat. 1. Hold it, stay right, stay put. Who else? 2. Don't move. 3. All right, take out the tag, hold it in your hand. So 3 persons. All right. So, can I see it, please, sir? So this person here, congratulations. You are the winner of a sports massage at Lavan Fitness. So you're going to utilize this as your possession. Is one person at a time, right? Secondly, let me see, please. Congratulations. You are the winner of a head and shoulder massage at Oasis Spa. Second. Everybody pulling out stuff from all over now. Okay. Running all along. All right, third person. You are the winner of head and shoulder massage at Oasis Spa, sir. Could I see yours, please? All right, so we also have, you have thing here too? What? Congratulations, so sports massage at Lava Den Fitness, right? Anything else? Is that a lot? So just want to add that those who may not have had a winning opportunity now, there are lots of other giveaways during the day on the different booths and activities, right? So you still have opportunities to get. What we have here, Mr. Chambers? Head and shoulder massage. Yes, sir. Sports massage. All right, so we want to move on to the next item on the agenda today, where we'll have the goat water and pumpkin soup. As somebody identified earlier, goat water and pumpkin soup. Pumpkin soup and goat water. You have
and your season's greetings. I know culture changes, but something about the new year makes everybody feel new and happy, so season's greetings. Definitely, Cameron KB, work with the Ministry of Health. I'm doing a few things today, so I really can't be here with you fully. May pass back later. My advice to men today, if I could, like I have a female friend who recently explained to me, you know, Cam, for real, I get to come home every day. If I have a problem, I get to vent to my mother about it. And men, not so much. You got to suck it up, be men. Okay, fine. My advice today to all the men, if there's a stigma, I think, Julius, you were talking about this early in the week about, you know, mental health, etc., and I think that is the theme this year. Definitely try and find somebody sometimes to tell you have a problem, even your counsel, what have you. Because if you really think about it, especially some of you older men, or, you know, you watch these old school movies, there's this really nice boss, main character in the movie. And he has a shrink. He's like, Doc, I think I have a problem. I want this to be a very good movie. I want it to end good, so we can have a good sequel, sell some, you know, tickets. I need some advice to make it to the end of the movie. There's nothing wrong with checking on your mental health. I think that's just the only thing I wanted to give to everybody today. All right? Again, just around this stigma, Julius would have touched on it. I have to go now. You have a good day for now. See you all later.
Thank you very much, sir.